And first of all, I would like to say our heartfelt thanks to Dr. Rosillo and his family. It's an extraordinary vision and leadership we have in place over the years, and we have visited Qatar in many sustainable development forums and also added value to the Doha Bank itself in advising us for our green banking mission. As well as the 10th of February, we had great communications, and it was a good shock for all of us to hear these remarks. We pray God that this will just increase. Let me come to the subject of discussion today in terms of how sustainability can be I can add value to say, as we know, Qatar and the Gulf states produce 20% of the world oil, 22% of the world gas. Essentially, the per capita carbon emission is also high. We thought it is appropriate as a part of our corporate social responsibility, Qatar and Doha Bank converge on a committed social responsibility and declare green banking as a concerted vision, and execution was to professional respect. In terms of United Nations committed mission to have environment sustainability, from a banking perspective, investments or lending, a portion, risk-weighted capital portion will be allocated for sustainable project. It could be water management, it could be waste management, it could be solar, it could be wind, biofuel, biomass. At a corporate level, we started engaging in allocating the risk-weighted capital, a limited portion of the shareholders' money for sustainable development. Recently, when the blockade within the Gulf countries cropped up, we have invested over $500 million, nearly 2.2 billion Qatari riyal, towards water conservation, for example. Our committed mission is to make sure we use the solar energy within the Gulf definition. This zone itself is called arid zone. Arid zone it means sunshine 365 days. And we have financed for solar technologies, not only Doha Bank, other financial institutions are also engaged in promoting throughout the Gulf. And we had a good experience in terms of commercial modeling. It's not a charity per se. Wind energy or solar energy, we have better opportunity. In line with the overall captive consumption in terms of energy security, we use solar development, and today we have a major engagement of solar technologies up to 1,000 megawatts in production in the offing. Qatar itself is producing nearly 77 million metric ton of LNG. The diversification distribution strategy around the world, this is the second world largest producer and distributor in terms of energy efficient, environment friendly LNG, right from Japan, South Korea, Singapore, India, China, and again, up to Golden Pass Terminal in Houston, US, we have a production as well as distribution as an investment partnership and joint ventures Qatar is engaged in. It's going to be scaled up further with the energy security requirements in the emerging markets, where there are constructive change in the energy mix. Qatar will be exporting more and more, up to 110 million metric ton of LNG, and financial institutions are engaged in the committed mission. As a part of overall social governance and commitment to the shareholders, all the stakeholders, society, we have engaged in disclosure principles as a sustainable performing index. One is, this is what we issued year after year over the last 15 years. This is sustainability report. Similarly, universal norms have been practiced in terms of governance report. In addition to this, I would like to show you my committed mission as an individual who engaged in recognizing the seriousness of the global warming and climate change. With the close coordination of United Nations, I embarked in a program in 2004 around the world. I showcased by engaging in showing the seriousness, rising sea level, increasing temperature, animal extinction, how the financial institutions can add value. It was a technical presentation right from Japan to IMF Washington between 2004 to 2007 across 27 countries. We presented, and this is a markup where there is an alligator and python reflecting the global warming and climate change. This is not a symbolic gesture. We felt the seriousness of the solvency of this planet. In order to protect the future of this planet, we thought banking can play a very significant role. If you aim at 55 to 60 trillion as a global productivity per annum, essentially the credit lines extended are double of the GDP in a normal growth momentum. And we are talking about hundreds of trillions in terms of credit expansion across the globe, whether wholesale or retail, treasury or investments. Today, even a 5% allocation of risk-weighted capital can create 5 trillion investments or lending towards sustainable development projects. And that is precisely I manifested as my research and also submitted to Universal Mission institutions who are engaged in, including United Nations, to see whether it can be, it can be regulated like Basel III was invented when there was capital adequacy issues when the global financial crisis cropped up. We also should set in based on the carbon emission. Each country has got a huge amount of commitment to make in terms of compliance architecture based on the carbon emission. If America is going to emit nearly 15% of the global carbon emission, if China is going to produce nearly 27% of the global carbon emission, if India is going to do 7% or Euro is going to do 10% of the carbon emission, by engaging a structured solution, ensuring the carbon credit trading comes in, environment is factored into the trading mechanism like foreign exchange trading, mercantile trading comes in with the carbon exchange programs. In addition, the lending has to take place with sufficient inclusion to make sure we have a really future in mind. And that is precisely where we are engaging. In addition to that, financial inclusion is a major thrust. A digital changing face of the world in terms of digitization can also add value in terms of a reduction of the carbon emission. Increase in 5% of the digital access in any government or public-private partnership can create extraordinary set of reduction, nearly hundreds of millions of megawatts of carbon emission reduction. And also we need to ensure the environment sustainability is factored into the overall digitization, and that is precisely we are embarking as an institution. And Doha Bank as a financial institutions is working with eco schools. The Gulf states that are we are propagating eco through UNESCO combination. We are promoting the school children to partake in multiple projects. Wherever Doha Bank has got its footprints, we are engaging in the culture of creating eco schools, and we have a competitive offering and promoting the value advantage of environment sustainability. We have created a website exclusively focusing on green mission. We are also supporting the recycling, reusing, or industrial high advanced engagement in terms of carbon reduction in a place where there are per capita carbon emission high, as I mentioned in the initial stage. So plenty of reasons to believe we are all having corporate social responsibility. I compliment the organizer in engaging in such sustainable development forum. Qatar as a country is engaged in a bigger scale with the United Nations. Recently, we have committed for 500 million US dollars in the United Nations sustainability programs. Last year, His Highness the Emir of Qatar has provided $100 million for small nations to be protected from rising sea level or increasing temperature. So as an institution which is socially committed, as a responsible human being, me as an individual, we are focusing in ensuring we create a better world for our children and grandchildren. And I'm excited about the overall prospects ahead in positively developing this culture across the globe and making sure our children and grandchildren are safe. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I wish the organizer wonderful conference and good evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you for sharing all that with us. Muchísimas gracias.
In the transformation we need to see. Let me be a bit personal. When I came into Norwegian politics, this small European nation of Norway, 30 years ago, I was basically worried with two issues. One was the hole in the ozone layer, which could give cancer to so many people if we didn't solve it. The other was acid rain, which destroyed the nature in my beautiful Norway, killing salmon, destroying animals. So these were the two issues, the hole in the ozone layer and acid rain. Please raise the hand, those of you who have been very worried with the hole in the ozone layer recently. Well, a few. But the reality is, of course, very few people are concerned with that matter now, because the matter is resolved. The ozone layer is back on track. By 2050, we'll be back in exactly the same way that it was before we humans started to destroy it. And exactly the same with acid rain. We have no problem with acid rain in Europe any longer. It's resolved, and salmon is back in all the major rivers in my nation because we solved the problem. But there is a lesson learned here. Why were we able to resolve these issues? Because three factors come together. There were lots of people saying, we need to change. We cannot live this way any longer. I don't want my children to have cancer, so please tighten the ozone layer. Then there were brave, visionary politicians setting the vision and regulating the markets and taking us where we wanted to go. And then there was business, finding all the technical solutions as to how we could change, providing numerous jobs with the change. And this is the recipe for societal change. Active civil society pushing for change, governments regulate the markets, and business involving in the technology. That's exactly what we need to do now. And let me be very upfront. Business is now largely, in most nations, ahead of politics, not hiding behind. The American company Microsoft just said, we in Microsoft will be carbon negative by 2030. Not even that. We will compensate for all the emissions we have done in the 40 years history of Microsoft. Not one government in the world has made such a promise. The Swedish furniture giant IKEA is investing massively in solar energy and will also go carbon negative in the very near future. Let me just give you one other example. The leader of COFCO, the enormous giant in the food industry in China, just went to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil and told the agribusiness of Brazil, please, please, please sustain the rainforest. Let's do this together. Let's protect nature. And if you want to sell to China, well, then you protect the beautiful nature of Brazil, because that's our common heritage. So business is acting, but of course they need to do more. I am a firm believer in one concept. That is the concept of triple wins. All the policies which can protect Mother Earth and the environment, create jobs and prosperity, and give us good health and a good life at the same time. And the good news is there is any number of triple win policies available for business and governments all over the world. And let me focus on three such triple win policies. First, green infrastructure. The President of the United States of America speaks as if the majority of jobs in his country is in the coal. Reality is, ladies and gentlemen, there are 5 times more jobs in the United States of America in solar industry than in coal. So if you want jobs, if you want prosperity, and if you want to protect Mother Earth, let's move from coal into solar and wind in the green infrastructure. And numerous nations are doing that. China is now more than half of all the solar investment in the world. Dr. Peshawari's home nation of India now has the first all-solar airport in the world, the first all-solar rail station in the world, and the metro of the big city of Delhi will be solar by 2021. So China is changing, India is changing, and you are changing right here in Mexico. In the Mexican state of Chihuahua, tell me if the pronunciation is wrong, Chihuahua, they just made a world record, the number of solar panels put up in one day. And the big solar plant, they will ultimately be 2 million solar panels and provide enormous energy for Mexico. And I can go on and go on. Germany has proposed to phase out coal. The United Kingdom is now at 2% coal in the energy mix. And this huge surge in green infrastructure, good for health, good for jobs, and good for the environment. Triple win policy. We have passed the time when coal was the cheapest source of energy. Wind and solar is now cheaper than coal anywhere in the world. That's of course a big shift. No one invested in coal because they thought it was good for nature, for health. We invested heavily in coal because it was cheapest. But now we can get the jobs, the prosperity, and protect Mother Earth with the same policies, the triple win policies or green infrastructure. Second main area is a circular economy. 99% of all clothes on planet Earth are just thrown into the dustbin when we don't use them any longer. That's completely idiot. Why don't we use the cotton or the wood in the clothes for new products in a circular economy? President Lagos hold up his cellular phone. Well, whenever we want a new cellular phone, if you are in the global middle class, we just purchase one and we throw away the other one. That cannot go on. There's any number of jobs as well as protection of nature to be had in the circular economy where we reuse what is in our computers and in our cellular phones. And it can be done, but governments need to regulate markets, and the Apples and Samsung and Huawei of this world need to do the technology and provide the technology. And think of plastics. We are throwing away so much plastics that animals, whales, turtles, seabirds are dying all over the world. A whale died the other week in Thailand. It had 60 plastic bags in its stomach because of our stupidity, our lack of a circular economy. Because with the plastic we put into nature, we need to bring it in and we need to turn it into new products, into diesel or into new plastic. and it's doable. Finally, green infrastructure, circular economy, we need to invest a lot more in nature. Costa Rica in Central America has doubled its tree cover in the last 2 decades. What a victory! Creating jobs, doing ecotourism, and doing well for the nature at the same time. Thanks so much. The Prime Minister just led tree planting in Ethiopia, 350 million trees planted in one day, world record. The Prime Minister of Pakistan has set the ambition of 10 billion trees planted in Pakistan. So let's organize a global movement for greening the planet in the physical sense, planting trees, protecting the forest, planting mangroves, and doing the green in the blue, planting the green in the oceans. All this can be done, providing jobs, doing good for health, and doing good for Mother Earth with exactly the same policies. Finally, some people sometimes tell you it cannot be done. Never believe them. What we said could not be done yesterday can be done today. We humans have made fantastic change. Before the Industrial Revolution, life expectancy on the planet was 30 years. Now young people here in Mexico can expect to be 77. Fantastic progress. Of course, we can do the same with the environment. We humans, if we come together, the United States and China, India and Mexico, if we all work together, there are no limits to what we can achieve. We just have to inspire each other to get it done, and we need to apply the triple win policies, creating jobs, people need jobs, protecting Mother Earth, and doing well for our health at the same time. Let's just do it. Yes, we can.
No, gracias. Buenas tardes. Sí, sí, sí. Buenas tardes. Solamente tengo 10 minutos o menos para darles una introducción de la importancia de este panel. Este panel, la idea que tiene es, por un lado, visibilizar el sentido de urgencia.
Good afternoon.
De que
This panel has two objectives. The first is the sense of urgency. The second is the issue of risk. For the first objective, the idea is to be able to make visible the sense of urgency against the strong impacts we are already observing due to climate change, which forces us to act today, not tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow, nor in 5 or 10 years. According to the studies of many of the leading scientists who are here, more than 3,000 studies and even up to 6,000 are telling us that surely by the 2030s, we could be reaching a global temperature increase of 1.5 degrees Celsius, which would cause, for example, having a greater number, frequency, and intensity of hurricanes and cyclones, rising sea levels, droughts in places where they did not exist, higher frequency of diseases transmitted by some vectors such as mosquitoes. Many endangered species are
estamos
not
perdiendo de una
resisting
manera muy
climate change.
rápida los arrecifes de coral en el corredor mesoamericano, en los grandes arrecifes de coral en Australia.
For
Muchas
example,
especies
the
están ya en
coral
peligro de
reefs
extinción,
in the
tanto plantas y
Mesoamerican
animales,
corridor
porque no están
and
resistiendo
the
esto. Y
Great
saben que
Barrier
podemos
Reef
estar en la
of
cola de
Australia.
esas especies que
Other
no podemos
species of
resistir ese
plants
cambio
and
del clima,
animals
¿no? Entonces,
in danger
número
of
uno, el
extinction
sentido de urgencia es hoy, y para tener ese sentido de urgencia, las Naciones Unidas y las negociaciones
for
en la
not being
Convención
able
Marco
to
de las
resist
Naciones
the
Unidas para el Cambio
change of the
Climático
climate.
establecen todos estos
And
compromisos
we
del Acuerdo
could
de
be
París,
at
que
the
el
end
1.5
of
grados
that list.
centígrados se había
So,
pronosticado para el
number
2100.
one, the
Pero
sense
saben
of
que el cambio
urgency
climático está
is
siendo más
today,
rápido que
and
nosotros
to
y se
have
está
the
adelantando
sense of
posiblemente
urgency, the
70 años.
United
Entonces,
Nations
todavía
and
tenemos
negotiations
oportunidad de
in the
cambiar
United
la
Nations Framework
tendencia en el incremento de esos gases que
Convention
van
on Climate
acumulando en la
Change
atmósfera y no tienen para
establish
dónde
all these
salirse. Ahí
commitments
están
in
y
the
cada
Paris
vez están
Agreement,
haciendo que
and
cambie la
there
temperatura.
the
Uno,
1.5
pedimos a los
degrees
gobiernos de
Celsius
los
had
países
been
que hagan
forecast for
programas y compromisos
2100.
de
However,
descarbonización. De
climate
septiembre a la
change
fecha
is being
hemos visto
faster
que más de
than
60
us and
países ya han
possibly 70
expresado su
years ahead.
compromiso de
And
llegar a
still,
economía
we
cero
have
carbono
an
para el
opportunity.
2050. Y
We
bueno, nos
still
faltan
have
todavía
an
30 años,
opportunity
pero a lo
to
mejor no es
change the
suficiente al
trend in the
2050. A lo mejor
increase
ese
of
sentido de
those
urgencia
gases
nos pide
that
que
are accumulating
reduzcamos
in the
drásticamente
atmosphere,
esas
causing
emisiones desde ahora para poder
the
tener
change in
resultados
temperature,
positivos en el 2030. Estamos
for
hablando de
which
10
we
años y
have
pasan muy
asked the
rápido. Y
governments
ahí
of the
entonces las
countries
soluciones
to
es los
make
mayores causantes
decarbonization
de estos gases
programs
de
and
efecto
commitments.
invernadero son dos
And
sectores:
from
cómo producimos
September
la
to
energía
date,
y cómo los
more than
transportamos.
60
Y
countries have
afortunadamente para
already
esos dos
expressed their
sectores ya hay
commitment to
soluciones
reach
tecnológicas que son
zero carbon
tecnologías limpias y
economies
que son
by 2050.
económicamente viables.
Perhaps
¿Sabían que la
it will
energía
not
eólica y
be
solar
enough,
son
and
más
that sense
baratas
of
para
urgency
producir energía
asks
que
us
quemar
to
gas o
drastically
petróleo?
reduce
¿Alguien
those
sabía eso?
emissions
Sí. Bueno,
from
de los que
now
dijeron que
on
sí,
in
ustedes
order
ya
to
tienen
have
paneles
positive
solares en
results
sus
in
casas. Los que
2030.
dijeron que sí tienen
The
paneles solares
solution
en
to
sus
achieving
casas.
emission
Bueno, los
reductions
paneles
is
solares en
in
nuestras
clean
casas
and
y ustedes
economically viable
pagan más o
technologies,
menos una
such as
factura de
wind
más de
and
2,000
solar
pesos, que son
energy,
como
that
$100,
produce
ya son muy
at
baratos. Es
a
más
lower
barato tener el
cost
panel
than
que estar
burning
pagando la
oil or
factura que
gas.
normalmente
It
estamos
is known
acostumbrados a pagar.
that the
Ese tipo
sectors
de
that
soluciones
generate the
son las
most
soluciones
greenhouse
que
gases
queremos que
are
como
energy
consumidores y
production
como
and
empresas
transport
y también como,
and
¿por
the
qué no como
transport sector.
gobiernos las
For
podamos
example,
adoptar? Y bueno, el otro
of
tema
energy
es el
that
tema
allows us
del
to save
riesgo. El
costs
riesgo del
are solar
clima
panels.
significa un
These
riesgo,
types
por
of
ejemplo,
solutions
para la
are what we
infraestructura, pero
want
también
as
significa un
consumers
riesgo para
and
los
also
bancos que
as
prestan dinero
companies,
para que se
and
haga
why
esa
not
infraestructura, ¿no?
also
Entonces
as
ya
a
hay un
government.
movimiento muy fuerte en todos los sistemas bancarios de
The
muchos
other
países
issue
en
is the
donde se
issue
está
of
pidiendo
risk.
o se está empezando a
Climate
medir
risk
cómo puede
means, for
influir el
example,
cambio
a risk to
climático en el
infrastructure,
riesgo de
but it
crédito
also
en muchos
means a risk
países.
to banks
Eso ya se
that
está
lend money
dando
to
y
make the
entonces también
infrastructure.
desde la parte
In
financiera
this
se
regard,
está
the banking
acotando
system
la
of many
necesidad
countries
de
are
poder
beginning to
medir
measure
el cambio
how
climático como un
climate
riesgo muy
change can
fuerte
influence
para
credit
los
risk.
sistemas financieros de
I
muchos
finish
países.
my
Con todo
speech
esto,
to
yo
give
termino aquí
space
para darle
to
un
the
poquito más de
panelists who are
tiempo a
going to
los
tell
demás
us
panelistas
what
que nos
actions
van a
the
platicar
companies may be
precisamente
taking in
de qué
order to make
acciones
this
pueden
emergency
estar
call
tomando las
really
empresas
possible
para
and
poder
be
hacer
today, not
que
tomorrow.
esta llamada de
Because I am
urgencia
looking
realmente
here
sea posible
many
y
young
sea
people
hoy,
who will
no
be
sea
the ones
mañana.
who in
Porque yo
10,
estoy viendo aquí
20, or
muchísimos
30
jóvenes y
years
saben que
will be seeing
ustedes
those
son los
fatal
que en
and
10 o
strong
20 o 30
consequences
años
of
van
climate
a estar
change.
viendo esas
I invite
consecuencias
you
tan
to please
fatales y
put
tan
pressure
fuertes del
on
cambio
decision
climático. Y los
makers,
invito, por
not only
favor,
in
a
governments, but
presionar
also
a
in
los que toman
companies to start
decisiones, no
turning
solamente
around
en los
and
gobiernos, sino
consider
también en las
all these
empresas, a que
clean
empiecen a
technologies that
voltear y a
help us
considerar a todas
decarbonize
estas tecnologías
economies.
limpias que nos
Thank you
ayudan a
very much.
descarbonizar las economías. Muchísimas gracias.
I will be brief. So thank you everyone for letting me speak here today. Low carbon options for business is a topic that's very close to heart right now, as Ingredion is in the process of setting our 2030 sustainability strategy. And so in looking to do that, we are looking at science-based target initiatives and how to limit the company's carbon emissions to a 1.5 degrees Celsius change. And so we do that. I know that number was a bit shocking to our leadership team when we first proposed it, but I can tell you that there's a lot of interest from our customers and our investors, that we as a Fortune 500 company have science-based targets. Our customers are putting a lot of pressure on us because they're seeing an increase in millennial spend around sustainable products. So I think our research currently shows that between 50 and 70% of millennials are making purchasing decisions based on sustainability considerations. And so all of this kind of collectively has put some pressure on us to drive some more low carbon options for the company. And I'll say this, that it's also a cost saver. Reducing our carbon emissions reduces a big part of our operating expense. And so that makes this very appealing to our CFO. So in looking at science-based targets and in aligning us to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, I will say this, that having those common frameworks or standards to work against has been very beneficial to us. So as you can imagine, with consumers having a preference for sustainable products, a lot of the companies that we provide to are looking to differentiate from their competition. And so as a supplier to those companies, it's not unusual for us to have requests to adhere to multiple programs. Sometimes one's created in-house or sometimes one's externally. And so the more we can align across our supply chain with some common frameworks, the more beneficial it is for us. The other thing is for us to really understand where are our carbon emissions coming from. So in the past, we've always looked at our own operations in trying to drive our reductions, but we know that this really isn't going to tackle the problem. So if we look across our supply chain and we use agricultural raw materials to make our products, we find that at the farm level, that represents about 39% of our carbon emissions. And so we know that our new program has to be responsive to that as well. The good news is that by aligning with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, we're able to find customers that are like-minded and are looking to make very similar changes as well. And so as an example, I would give you, we have one customer that's looking to drive out nitrogen or reduce nitrogen in their agricultural supply chain. And we are kind of co-funding a project to get growers registered in a system to track their nitrogen and make reductions. And so some of that money is getting passed along to the farmer. Most of that money is getting passed along to the farmer to make those changes and to support programs that help them better conserve soil and reduce nitrogen use. So for us, I think as an organization standing alone, if we were in a box without anybody else, we would find it very difficult to meet the targets that we're setting. But I think when we look collectively out at the expertise of NGOs, of our customers, of our farmers, and we collaborate together, I think that's where we're going to find success. And so when my executive team asked me, well, how are we going to get to these targets? My answer was, I don't know, right? But I can tell you it's not doing the things that we've done in the past. It'll be looking at the problem differently and tackling it differently. So that's low carbon from the operational side. And then I think we also have an obligation to produce products that enable our customers to have the same success in their programs. And so being a nature-based company and making things primarily out of corn or maize, we have the opportunity to support low carbon initiatives of our customers as well. So whether that's a customer making a body wash that wants to replace a petroleum product with a nature-based product, or whether it's a traditional animal protein company looking to go to a plant-based protein to help minimize the carbon footprint associated with that, or to give consumers what they're preferring, So we have that back end of the solution too, or the downstream solution where we're looking to make products that enable our customers to drive low carbon manufacturing as well. And I think, when we look at consumers and we consider how do we educate consumers, or how do we get them to make more responsible choices? I mean, I think that's a two-pronged approach. One is, I think we need to be transparent about our operations so that consumers can make informed decisions. But then I think we're also obligated to provide products that are greener or lower carbon, but also have the same or better performance. And so in the case of the body wash I mentioned, we helped a customer take out the petroleum products out of their formulation and instead replace it with a cornstarch. But in replacing that with the cornstarch, we also gave them the same texture technology that we use in yogurt that gives it a very silky mouthfeel. And so this body wash now has a very silky feel on the skin, and it's been a huge success for our customer. So their sales have increased. It's a greener, lower carbon product for the consumer, and it's a success for us as a valued supplier to that customer. So I think there's an educational piece, but then I think there's a performance piece. Consumers rightfully want products that perform as well or better, but have a sustainability message. And so, I think that's kind of the scope of what we're looking at across the board in terms of low carbon manufacturing. And again, I'll just reiterate in closing, I think that this has to be a collaboration, right? No company, I think, can do this alone. And so we are continuing to look for supply chain partners and leveraging that expertise so that we can, really help make sure that we're driving a low carbon future for the planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of you. Welcome to the city of Durango to be with us in this important event. Companies in the industry must assume their responsibility to implement solutions on time. Almost all of these solutions are directly related to the interest of the company organization, just as the vulnerability and the risk of negative impacts derived from climate change. The economic benefits of decarbonizing actions in the energy sector, its reputation, and in some cases, the importance of increasing opportunities on the issue of employment. The purpose of this panel is to respond to these concerns, and with the pleasure and honor of receiving all of you, I give the floor to Mr. Mauricio Bonilla, Executive Director of the Global Impact Network of Mexico.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Dear everyone, although the political negotiations at COP25 did not achieve what was wanted or expected, companies, investors, cities, and other groups have clearly increased their ambition by sending signals that the transition from a gray to a green economy is already underway. In response to a call to action from the United Nations Global Pact and its partners, 190 companies are setting ambitious climate targets aligned to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels, and to reach net zero by 2050. Their goals will be validated by the Science Based Goals Initiative. 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels and reach net zero by 2050. Their goals will be validated by the Science Based Goals Initiative. The signatory companies of this business campaign for 1.5 degrees centigrade collectively represent more than 5.8 million employees, covering 36 sectors with offices in 37 countries and a market capitalization of more than $3.8 trillion indicates the scale at which the movement continues to grow. The three sectors with the largest number of companies are the professional services sectors with 19 companies, telecom with 14, banks, financial services, and insurance, another 14. Heavy industry companies with 21 and two more public services or energy. The campaign has the backing of a historic coalition of the United Nations, business, and civil organizations that support a strong message that is our ambition and our actions must be audacious if we want to have any chance of winning this race that requires speed. A few weeks ago, at the Davos Economic Forum, Switzerland, you showed great leadership in mobilizing CEOs to achieve net emissions by 2050 or earlier and make this commitment through this 1.5 degrees centigrade business ambition campaign. This is a real sign of hope and partnership to tackle the climate emergency we have been talking about. In parallel with action within their own operations and value chains, corporate climate leaders must challenge their governments to use this year to establish clear economic development policies that allow them to invest decisively in a future of zero emissions. Through this cycle of positive ambition, public and private partners can drive more meaningful and ambitious climate action, particularly high emission sectors. Today, 16 countries have adopted with clear and specific zero emissions targets, committing decarbonization as well as to scaling carbon removal to offset emissions that may be difficult to eliminate. Among them, we have Costa Rica, Fiji, Denmark, Finland, France, Japan, Norway, Portugal, Iceland, Sweden, Switzerland, the Marshall Islands, the United Kingdom, and Uruguay, among others. The leaders of the European Union agreed to reduce the emissions of their entire bloc to zero emissions by 2050. Another example has been subnational jurisdictions such as California and New York that also committed to achieving zero emissions. Dozens of other countries are already in talks to achieve these net zero emission targets by 2050. We hope to hear from Mexico soon. Some ambitious targets by 2050, which will allow companies that are already committed science-based targets to be mobilized today. In Mexico, there must be 6 companies enrolled in the initiative to set their emission reduction goals quite ambitiously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here and to participate to this event, and I would sincerely like to thank Dr. Pachauri for that. I belong to an institution, ESCP. I don't know how many people have already heard about ESCP in the room. Probably not so many here. We have 6 campuses in Europe, in Paris, Berlin, London, Turin, Madrid, Warsaw. And we are also the first business school established in the world 200 years ago. We have partnership with institutions such as MIT or Tsinghua in China. I'm mentioning that because for the school, sustainable development is a very hot topic. We have been working on this for many years. We have chairs, research centers, courses on sustainability. Our mission is to develop future leaders who will be the architects of a sustainable world. We are convinced to have a role to play in partnership with our ecosystem. In our research, we demonstrate that low carbon options can also contribute to save money. The new generation is already convinced. They contribute to put some pressure on companies. And more, we hear students saying that they don't want to join that or this company because they have bad behaviors regarding carbon management. If the new generation is convinced, it's much more challenging with current executives who do not necessarily fully realize what is at stake and how urgent it is to make radical change. They need to recognize they share part of responsibility in the current situation, and this is really challenging. We developed a series of conferences, Stand Up for a Sustainable World. Her Excellency Amina Gulib Farkim, with her, former president of Mauritius, L'Oréal UNESCO Award winner for Women on Research, was our first speaker. She impressed the audience when she described the impact of climate change on Africa. We also had His Sérénissime Highness the Prince Albert II of Monaco, who addressed the impact of climate change on the oceans. Pierre Laroutourou, European economist and member of the European Parliament, came to present concrete solutions. According to him, money is not an issue. Money is available. We just need to accept to allocate it. Several years ago, we accepted to allocate money to save the banking system. Now it's time to allocate money to save our planet. Amina introduced me to Dr. Pachauri. I have immediately been impressed by his energy and his commitment to create a better world. He reminded me Mohamed Yunus, another Nobel Peace Prize winner, for his work on how to alleviate poverty. I had nice discussions with Dr. Pachauri, who was interested by this notion of social business model. In an article co-authored with Mohamed Yunus, we advocate for the creation of socially driven companies. More recently, I worked with the B Corp movement, and I found the same willingness to take concrete actions to create a better world. B Corp or benefit corporations are companies who made the decision to have social impact in their legal status. Too often, large companies are driven by shareholders with a short-term vision. This is the main obstacle to implementation of low-carbon mission. Our role is to demonstrate that it can bring economic and social profits. We are optimistic as young generations who join those companies are the best advocates for promoting sustainability, including low-carbon options. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful to be here and I appreciate Dr. Pachauri's invitation. And first of all, I want to say that because we are here, we are all already aware of the urgency of human-generated climate change. So I don't need to go into that. Because we are here, we all know there are technology opportunities to mitigate climate change. So I think we need to just address what's underlying the issue of activating this mitigation. And I think that we need to really recognize that it lies in our own hearts, and it lies in our ability to collaborate and partner and bridge the gaps between all the different sectors and between who's financing and what are they financing, and who's, who do we have looking at all of these various technologies. I'm an entrepreneur and I'm aware of lots and lots of technologies that don't get funded. So for example, not only are there good alternatives for low-cost renewables like solar and wind, but also there's some very creative solutions in every other industry. As an example, here in Mexico, in the state of Guanajuato, there's a multi-stakeholder partnership with business and the government that produced a road project that replaced asphalt, which is produced from crude oil, with recycled plastic. So this not only eliminates the use of oil, but it offers a solution for management of plastic waste, and it prolongs the lifespan of highways by 50% compared to conventional asphalt. So creative solutions like this are what's possible because of the urgency of what's happening. And we need to start doing moonshot thinking and out-of-the-box thinking. And we can't stay in our own lane. We can't stay in our own sector. We have to reach out. Another thing that I want to point out is there is an enormous transfer, $68 trillion transfer of wealth over the next decade to women and millennials. This is a population that has already signaled their commitment to invest based on their values and based on the future. So there is a lot of opportunity and hope here lying dormant, but they need to know how to reach out and they need to know what to invest in. And that's where the partnership between science and business and industry can really help. We also have a growing impact investing industry and a worldwide social entrepreneur movement of people coming up with brilliant business ideas and technologies that address just the designs of circular economy that people have been talking about. And it's really the opportunity to tap into that network and that movement that is what's sitting on the table, and the opportunity that we can take to address this urgency. And I also want to address the fact that there have been global companies, enormous companies, like Unilever in the food space, that have, they are convinced that businesses that thrive in the future will be those that serve society today. 10 years ago, Unilever started their sustainability plan and committed to decoupling their growth from their environmental footprint. So, given this evidence that we can implement sustainable technical solutions, and given the evidence that when we invest in the well-being of our workforce and our citizens, and that when we ensure that women are in leadership roles, that all of these actions make our businesses even more profitable. Why are we not seeing a massive change? What are we missing? That's my question. So Einstein said that the unleashed power of the atom has changed everything, save our modes of thinking, and thus we drift toward unparalleled catastrophe. So this isn't the first time we've looked at human-generated possible planetary annihilation. As a child, I had to do drills and hide under my desk because of preparing for nuclear attack. I mean, imagine thinking that a desk is going to protect a child from nuclear attack. This is the kind of willful blindness that we're continuing to see today. What's our blind spot? What is the blind spot that we're all addressing? So I'd like to say that there's been a hyper-masculine form of power that has dominated almost all of our societies and all of our institutions across the globe. Einstein also said the real problem is in the hearts of man. I think he was pointing to this same blind spot. So I think it's time to welcome women into power and leadership. And I want to acknowledge Mexico as providing that leadership with their feminist agenda. It's really a gold standard for countries around the world to look to. And I'm thrilled to know that Mexico has made this commitment. I think that the UN Secretary General went on record last week by claiming that dismantling gender inequality will transform the world. And it is critical to solving intractable global challenges like climate change. So it's time to see more collaboration instead of competition and co-creation instead of domination. It's time for industry and finance and governments and academics and entrepreneurs to lead through business practices and investments based on respect, empathy, reciprocity, and considering future generations. Principles that reflect a natural order and have the power to produce profits while supporting resilient communities and sustainable ecosystems. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon to all of you. My presentation will be based from the perspective of a policy researcher, more as a critical policy researcher. And since my mentor, Dr. R.K. Pachauri, he envisaged that WSDF should be an event which influences the global agenda, I will try to make some points related to that. So firstly, on the current scenario and gaps. What we are seeing today, if we sort of look at a more global level, is the limited participation of businesses in global sustainable development initiatives. For example, we know that the United Nations Global Compact has been around since 2000. Yet 59% of the Fortune 500 companies are not a part of UN Global Compact. And many of these companies are in the United States and China. So beyond the good examples of Microsoft and IKEA and Unilever, there are many more big companies out there who are not yet in the, action where we need them to be. Second, another example of global initiatives. 2011, the United Nations Human Rights Council endorse the guiding principles for business and human rights. In terms of the state response from governments, where are we today? Only 73% of UN member states, 73% of UN member states still do not have a national action plan on business and human rights. So again, the role of the state and the role of the industry, it's still not where what we desire. Then in terms of the limited scope of action, most of global initiatives remain voluntary and there is very less regulation involved. So we really need states and governments to step up on that. Of course, there is changing environment and some countries where stock exchanges are also being involved. For example, India, where I come from, the SEBI, which is the regulatory body for stock exchanges, mandates that the top 500 companies listed should have a business responsibility reporting. But is that information enough? If we are seeing today in this world, youth, social movements, Fridays for Future, really like demanding more ambition from governments, I don't think so the information with just business responsibility or sustainability reporting is good enough. We need much more information in a comparable format. So yes, information is key. A dozen years ago, international organizations started to make available open data on countries. We still don't have that for companies, and especially in a comparable format. And we need this kind of information for peer pressure groups to demand more ambition from global institutions, from politicians, and from even industry. Even in the Sustainable Development Goals, target 12.6, which is on company reporting, it's not a good enough indicator, I feel. So just to wrap it up, because I don't really want to come between the lunch, and I'm the last speaker here, we certainly need information for accountability and peer pressure, including youth. We need to go, of course, beyond the operational level and incorporate the entire ecosystem, including regulatory authorities. Certainly need to harness consumer power much better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greetings to you all from Nigeria. I am Samuel Chijikokore, climate activist, environmentalist, social justice advocate, social researcher, and an advocate for the SDGs. Here is Nigeria, and the area is beautiful. This is Calabar, Cross River State, State of Tourism. And my apologies that I couldn't make it for the conference, just that things didn't turn out the way it was planned. And I promise I'm going to be there next time. But I am missing everybody in the conference, believe me. I wish I was there to also give you a live input. But nevertheless, I believe that this video also is going to convey the message clearly, and also some documents which I'm going to send by that will also help to facilitate my speech. Now, I am to treat on the topic low carbon option for industries and business, or for business and industries. Now, we know that climate change is a global phenomenon that has affected so many nations, so many business, so many industries. And currently too, climate change is also a viable tool in market currently. And then based on research, I've been able to understand that climate change can be able to generate over 23 trillion US dollars if only investors are able to invest wisely. Now, the question is, what can be substituted for low carbon? What can industries actually do to bring low carbon and also make profits? Now, we have so many things that industries can do. We have tourism, which is what Dubai is using to make money, Singapore, and all that. And also, we also have solar, we have hydro power and all that. But today I want to talk about energy. Now, energy, which also has to do with power, which also has to do with source at which companies rely for their manpower. Now, we know that every company rely on over 80% energy in order for them to be productive. Now, how about if these companies transform their source of energy, which has to do with probably from fuels, from coal, gas, and oil, and go into solar? Yes, solar. How about if companies start using solar energy? How about that? It's going to go a long way. And also it's going to be a viable business in the market, because most persons are not into solar system, and most persons think that probably it doesn't last and all that. But based on research has made us to understand that solar energy is one of the best renewable source of energy, and in as much as it's one of the best renewable source of energy, it is also viable. We could see, for instance, in US, most of their power supply is from solar, and also in top developed countries. Sorry, here in Nigeria, we are not able to have access to those form of energy as it is renewable, but I believe very soon we will also adopt it. And if this energy is being invested by industries, at least we will stop depending on fuels in cars. We could go on electric cars. We could go on even on the flights. We could also source for natural gas that could also facilitate flight, rather than using the ones that are very, very harmful also and toxic to human health. I believe that there are so many things to be done in industries, and I believe that industries too has major roles to play, especially government parastatals, because they are the ones at the end of the day that are going to issue this investment to whoever want to invest. I believe if government can also be able to institute low carbon option for business and industry into their policy, it will also go a long way to curb the issue which we are facing today. We see how the climate is changing rapidly. We see how the global warming is rising. Currently is about 5 to 6 degrees Celsius, which is very, very bad. And the IPCC, they are trying really hard to make sure that it is reduced below 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now, we can achieve this. We have to plant trees. We have to carry out many actions. We shouldn't just rely on giving words, advices, and all that. Time is for action. This is for action. We have to act now. Okay? A leader once said to me, Sam, if you want to be great, start acting now. Stop talking. And I believe that this same thing goes for all the youth out there. If we want to make it big, if we want to do great things, we need to act now. We need to go into the market. We need to make things happen. We need to transform our industry. We need to bring proposals, give them a viable, realistic proposals, and not proposals by mouth. Give them something that could be taxable, something that could be viable, and something that is realistic and feasible. I believe with this, the world is going to come to the extent whereby we have a zero net carbon use, and also we have a zero net carbon consumption, thereby promoting low carbon intake by we human beings, which also have to help to reduce the global warming to the way which the IPCC are looking up to, which is 1.5 degrees Celsius, below 1.5 degrees Celsius rather, and also we could be able to achieve the Paris Climate Agreement. From here, I am Samuel Chichikokore. Thank you very much. I'm a Nigerian and I am proud of my country. And I hope we all too are proud of where we come from. Thank you and remain blessed. Bye-bye.